There are so many people with amazing personal stories, and I spend so much time looking at celebrities with no makeup on. It's time to change that with regular amazing people. So, hello to Lisa and Dylan, and my first question is, how do you pronounce your last name?
We actually disagree on that. His grandmother says Beaulieu, so that's how I say it, but he'll say Beaulieau because that's how everybody else says it.
Yeah,
So
easiest that way.
I think I'm going to go with Grandma on that one.
sure, Beaulieu. Yeah,
Beaulieu.
yeah.
Um, so we're going to talk about your surrogacy, Lisa. So you carried a baby as a surrogate for somebody else. But before we do that, I just like, can we tell me a little bit about your family and maybe a little bit of your story, how you got to here today, and yeah, just share a little bit with us.
Well, Dylan and I have been married for almost 16 years, and when we were, yes, it's almost 16. When we were in our 5th year of marriage, we actually lost our first baby, and just partway through the pregnancy. And it was in, coming through that I made the decision. It's something I've always thought about being a surrogate, but I decided, I was like, Kate, if this isn't my reality, like if I can someday have a healthy baby, I want to help other families that might be experiencing infertility or just the desire to become parents. And I realized what a gift it is to be able to have children. So that's where I got to. And then about a year later, we found out we were pregnant with our daughter Lyric, who's now 9. And a couple of years ago, Dylan says, I just want one kid. And I was like, all right. I didn't come to it that easily, but if you don't want any more children, I'm going to be a surrogate before I get too old. And he's like, all right, we'll see if this happens. And so I applied to actually a different agency first, but then I found out about a couple that I knew growing up in Estevan that now lived in Australia that were looking. So I ended up joining with their agency, which is, shameless plug, Surrogacy Canada Online.
Great.
And Sally is the leader of our agency, and so through them we've had the support we all needed, and that's how I came to be a surrogate.
So so you said you heard of a couple that you grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? Because I wouldn't imagine that's like a dinner table conversation.
Well, I'm pretty chatty, and I was talking about it at work because I was with the other agency at the time, and I was just starting to look through profiles of intended parents, and like these are people from all over the world. And I just was talking about it out loud, and a lady getting her nails done who is a mutual friend, she's just like, well, do you remember Tim and Chun from high school? And I was like, well, Tim's way younger than me, but I knew Chun, and I actually was his hairstylist when he was in university as well. And she's like, well, they live in Australia now, because I'd obviously lost touch with him. And she goes, and they're looking for a surrogate. And I said, well, hook us up. Like, give a message on Facebook and tell them to add me, and we'll get talking. So that's how that all came to be.
And they had been through how many prior surrogates before you?
There was 2 that backed out.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I hadn't even thought of that, Dylan. So
long, arduous process.
Yeah.
Like well before implantation, it is a process.
So by the time they found me, they'd had 2 people say, "Yep, I'll be your surrogate," and then, back out before anything even went forward, like before even fertility drugs or anything. But it's pretty intimidating once you get started. So I can see how.
Well, like the legal's difficult. There was one point where we were meeting with our lawyer here in Canada, and the 2 lawyers, their job wasn't to make this happen and facilitate it. Their job was to get as much for their client as possible. So there was one point where we were looking across the table when our lawyer was out of the room, like, do we really want to do this? But It turns out what their lawyer was demanding wasn't what they were willing to agree to. So we almost quit
just because we're getting frustrated
because of the lawyers.
But once we talk to them directly, we're just like, hey, this is something that's really bothering us. And they're just like, that's not something that is really important to us. Like, we're willing to wiggle on that. And I was like, okay, well, between our 2 lawyers, your lawyer was not. So fortunately, we cleared the air with some personal communication, and we were able to go forward.
So even with going through show me the cup again. Well,
Surrogacy in Canada online.
Surrogacy in Canada online. Great. I'll put a link up on the video too. So
Oh, thanks.
even with going through them, so do they provide a lawyer for you guys?
Nope. The agency basically, they're kind of like a matchmaking company. Well, not company because they're not profit. So intended parents pay a fee to this agency that puts their profile up, and then surrogates, we join and we look through. You actually have to do a little bit of a questionnaire at first to make sure that your kind of morals match, you know, because like,
Okay.
Because there's no financial gain in Canada. I know that's different than the United States. You can get a hefty sum doing this in other countries, but there's laws against that in Canada.
So in Canada, like surrogacy can't have any profit. So basically when they go onto the agency, they set us up and they just make sure that we're a good match. And then throughout the process, Sally and other surrogates that are either going through it at the time or have already been through it are just kind of like a support network for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to lawyers and stuff like that, they left it up to me to find my own lawyer. And we just ended up using the same one that has done the contracts for egg donors before.
Okay.
So we just found somebody with experience and that's how I found my lawyer.
So how long was the process from the time that you hooked up with them on Facebook, the couple in Australia, to the time that you actually, I guess, decided to do an in vitro fertilization? That's how it would work, right?
Yeah, it was IVF. Actually, the process can go a lot faster. We ended up connecting with them in about January or March of 2018, I think it was. Yeah, 2018.
It was a while ago. Yeah.
But I told them, I was like, you know, I really don't want to be pregnant through the summer because we just bought a camper and I wanted to drink some margaritas. And I just wanted some time to like really go through the process. But I know like in Ontario and Vancouver and stuff like that, if you live there and you're like, yeah, I want to be a surrogate, it can happen within 2 or 3 months. But we were it was October of 2018 that I went to see a maternal fetal specialist, and I ended up not being able to see the one I wanted to. And the one I did see, she didn't think I was a good candidate. So that slowed us down for about 8 weeks because I had to get the report to the fertility doctor and I had to get a second opinion. And luckily the second opinion doctor was just like, overweight, middle-aged women have babies all the time. You're fine.
Yeah. But that's another hurdle. Like the doctors held us up a lot there, and we couldn't tell the parents what was going on, so they were kind of left in limbo.
Yeah, we were advised by the agency. They're like, don't say anything, and the fertility doctor said, don't tell anything to the parents just yet until we get the report and we know for sure what's going on.
And this was all over. Basically, they were saying you were too old, right?
I was too old and I was too overweight.
Yeah.
But
they weren't saying no. They weren't saying no, you can't do it. But it was just stuck. So
yeah, we had to go through a little bit more of a process. So that brought us to. So that was, oh gosh, end of October. And then
May of 2019 was fertilization.
No, it was March.
Oh, okay.
So I finally got my second opinion in January. And then February, I started taking fertility drugs. Well, not fertility drugs, basically hormones.
Yeah.
And March 5th of 2019, I had in vitro transfer. So.
And it worked the first time?
First time.
Miraculously. That's apparently not supposed to happen.
Not very common.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And it was scary. Like there was the first 6 months were touch and go, or 4 months?
We had a few times where we thought we were miscarrying, and I ended up in the hospital, and she was always there. Her heart was beating strong, and we found out about 5-6 months in that there was actually a complication between the umbilical cord and the uterus, and there was like a blood vessel sticking out. So we were very fortunate that she's still there, but because of that, I had to take things a little more careful and had to have a C-section in the end. But other than that, I guess it's pretty common for in vitro fertilization to have certain different complications than natural pregnancy. So we were very fortunate that she hung on and she's healthy and happy and everything like that.
So 2 years process pretty much?
Yeah, it was 2 years. And like by the time they went back to Australia at the end of February, it was about 2 years since we first connected.
Yeah.
So.
And by the way, you were pregnant in the summer, so.
I was. The whole plan was like get pregnant in October, be done by June, July.
Yeah.
Still have summer. But no, I ended up having a summer pregnancy anyways. But he liked it.
Oh yes.
I always had a designated driver and someone to be a responsible parent. And
So wait, what's the summer like in Canada? Where do you guys live?
We live in Estevan, Saskatchewan. So we're about 10 minutes we're right in the middle of Canada, and we're about 10 minutes up from the American border.
Yeah, we're 2 hours north of Minot, North Dakota.
Okay. So what are your temperatures like in the summer?
We don't get really,
Plus 40 in the summer, minus 40 in the winter.
yeah, we don't really get much summer. We get end of May, June, July, August, and then September it starts to cool off again. So it's very,
Wait. Plus 40? Is that so? Wait. I don't know
well,
what that
not
is.
always.
Celsius.
Yeah.
He's exaggerating. It can get up to like in the high 30s Celsius, but it's not always super hot.
Wait, I gotta do a calculation. I don't know do you know what that is Fahrenheit?
Well, I know
it's like-
minus 40 Fahrenheit is the same as minus
I think
40
it's-
Celsius.
I think it's around 85, 86. something
That
like
sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it. We'll just go with that.
I've got my converter here.
It's definitely got to be cooler than Missouri with all the humidity. We get up to mid 90s, hit 100 every now and then.
Yeah, we're bald prairie, so it's a dry heat. There's no humidity here.
Nice.
But it was hot and uncomfortable, and a lot of times I just went to bed in the air-conditioned camper.
Mhm.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
So Dylan, as all this is going on, I mean, clearly Lisa had brought it up to you years before that, right? I mean, this was brought up when you lost your first baby. Is that when you actually brought up the topic, or?
Yeah, I just don't think he ever believed that I'd actually do it. Like, because I always
Probably
talked
true.
about it, and he just would be like, "Oh yeah, interesting, cool."
Yeah, she also talks about getting ponies. So
Well, we don't live on an acreage, so there's no
just
ponies.
say, haha, okay.
There won't be ponies.
So as she's going through this, what are you going through at the time?
Oh, I don't know. I was just kind of along for the ride. I'd say I took this one okay.
Mhm.
There was
He was
moments of
very
frustration, but
supportive.
it's what she wanted to do. It's a dream of hers. So she let me pursue a needless university degree that's collecting dust. So that was 6 years versus her 1. So I'm sure it wasn't that bad of a trade-off for me.
Yeah.
It's funny. Well, and what was your daughter's name again?
It's Lyric, Lyric.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So Lyric is now 9. Is that right?
Yeah. She's
So,
9.
so she would have been 7 at the time when this all started.
Yes.
And what was her reaction, or how did she deal with it?
Well, as a 7-year-old, she was a little upset because she said, why can't we just have another baby? And I had to explain to her that Dad and I are just happy with just her, and we like our life with only one kid, and we get to do a lot more and have a lot more fun just because, it's easier with just one kid. And she wasn't okay with it. And then about 2 days later, she hopped in the car after school and she's like, "Mom, you have to do it." She goes, "These people need a baby." And I said, "What changed your mind?" She goes, "I just thought if you never had me, how sad would you be? So we have to do this." But she had one condition. She says, "I'm the big sister, no matter what."
So sorry.
No, that's okay. They agreed to it. They said Lyric can be the big sister. So
That's awesome.
Ooh.
So
She took
if-
it in pride. Like
yeah,
she's known everything. She's
yeah, she's
Yeah.
been really great.
what if she hadn't come around? Would you have continued and just dealt with that, or was that really important to you to proceed?
Well, because a lot of the concern for our family and friends when we decided to do this was Lyric's mental state about it all and Lyric's feelings. They're just like, you could traumatize her, by taking this baby away, or how are you just gonna have this baby and not have one for your daughter to enjoy after? So it was important for me that she was on board, but I knew that, like, I have a really smart kid, and I knew that I could help her see it in the way that it really was, rather than her feeling like somebody was taking something away from her. It was something we were adding to her life instead of taking away. But that was a big concern with all of our family, was traumatizing her, and it didn't.
Yeah. So that must have been a big relief when she got in the car that morning and made the announcement, right?
Yeah, and when she makes up her mind, she makes up her mind. Like,
No way.
Yeah, she's always been that kind of a girl. So I knew that she meant it, and yeah, we even took her with us because part of the process before getting in vitro was doing a psych evaluation. So Dylan and I had to go sit with a grief psychologist, actually, and we brought Lyric with us because we wanted her to hear what he had to say. And he ended up talking to her at one point, and she's just like, "I'm good. I'm going to be a big sister. I'm good." And I was like, she means it. She's not just covering it. If she felt any other way, she'd let us know. So.
Now, why was it a grief counselor? Was it?
I'm not sure. He just told us that he specialized in grief. So
that
maybe
was just his specialty.
Yeah. So I don't know if they purposely put us with a grief psychologist, but I can see how that would be beneficial because it can feel like grief at some points if you let it. So,
Sure.
but he was a very nice man.
Yeah, his purpose was just to deem us a psychologically sound couple, you know, like so that I wouldn't,
Get
in a fit
attached.
of rage, do something that might harm the fetus, or she might not, or she might not harm the fetus unintentionally.
Or that, you know, he would have a hard time with giving up the baby after, or even myself, but we both knew what we were getting into. It's not like we were surprised and we're like, oh shoot, we're pregnant, what are we going to do? You know, it was something we planned, so we were good that way.
So what was that process like when, I mean, I have more questions about stuff, but since you mentioned giving up the baby after,
It was
tell me
never
about that, yeah.
a surrogates, like, and a lot of people in my group say this, and I've become very close with a lot of the surrogates from all over Canada. And it is truly the mental state when you have that baby and when you carry that baby is it was never yours. You're just giving it back. So the whole time I was pregnant with her, it wasn't that I didn't love her and it wasn't that I didn't care for her. Like when we thought we were miscarrying, I was devastated. But once she was born, like, yeah, like she was beautiful and she was amazing, but she wasn't mine. So they actually were in the OR with us and they got her right away. They stayed in the hospital with me for a few days so I could nurse her. And so it was kind of nice to like get to enjoy her a little bit before she was totally theirs. And it wasn't hard. I mean, I had my normal pregnancy hormones and feeling attachment and all that kind of stuff, which, funny enough, I watched The Mandalorian 2 days after I gave birth. And I have an incredible attachment to Baby Yoda. And I think it was all my pregnancy hormones. So like, I'm like crazy about Baby Yoda now. Because I think in my mind, kind of replaced her a little bit. So, but yeah, it wasn't as hard as anybody thinks it would be. It was beautiful. It was actually such a good experience that if he let me, I'd do it all over again.
Wow. That says a lot.
Yeah.
But no.
No.
Well, I tell you, with the level of the whole world fell in love with Baby Yoda, so you must be like way, you know, even more attached than everyone.
Yeah, I just thought it's like, is everybody else as crazy about him as me? And Dylan's like, I think you're a little more crazy about him, but yeah, I really, really love him. Yeah, and he came along at the perfect time in my life.
I guess so.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So you said you'd do it again if Dylan would let. What? So that's a pretty amazing statement. I mean, I wouldn't think that, you know, 'cause that's a lot to put your. I mean, honestly, it's a lot to put your body through it. And you know, I know with my, so I have four. And yeah, I think one probably is a little easier, but you know, I love that. Sorry, boys, I love you.
All boys?
Yeah, all boys, four boys, and we had one miscarriage along the way too. And you know, I think you don't realize how common that is until you go through it, and then you hear stories from so many people, including like both my grandmothers. You know, it's just people go through it. But so, Dylan, what are your? Because she says she'd do it again. What are your?
I know she'd do it again. I just purposely flunked the psych eval, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It was an experience, and there was a good chunk of time where she made me promise never to let her do it again. So I'm gonna hold her to it.
It was in the middle of summer when I was hot and getting big, and I was just like, whoever said they love being pregnant? But when you look back, the pregnancy part's such a short part of it.
I know.
but when you're in it, it feels like an eternity. So, and you know, because there was complications, I think I just was having a hard time enjoying being pregnant. I just wanted to get to the end and get her to where she was healthy and big enough to be born. So yes, I did make him promise that. That is a fact.
So I'm just holding on my end of the bargain.
Yeah.
That's like a movie scene. You make the promise in the heat of battle, and then, you know, you have to keep the promise afterward no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So Dylan, was there any impact at all for you for the baby to be turned over in the OR, or was that?
No, not really. I thought the whole process was interesting, but there was no issues for me. I can't say that I ever really formed an attachment And she likes to show me videos because she's in contact with them, and I'm just like, yeah, that's a baby. Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
No issues for me whatsoever.
So what? So you mentioned that you're still in contact with them, and they send pictures, and or
Yeah,
how does
every
that?
day we either say hi or good morning or happy Friday or whatever maybe on just through Facebook Messenger. And yeah, they always have pictures and videos of her on their FaceTime stories and Instagram, and then sometimes they send me ones personally for myself, and I really enjoy it. I consider them very, very close friends now, so it'd be weird to go too long without talking to them. So
So did you talk to them pretty constantly throughout the whole pregnancy too?
oh yes,
Oh, yeah.
every day, and we sometimes FaceTime, but the time difference, they're 15 and a half hours ahead of us where they live
Yeah.
in Australia. So it was mostly through text. But yeah, from the pregnancy throughout the whole thing, like the day that I got the transfer done, I called them, and and anytime there was complications, they were right there on the phone or through text with me. And yeah, and then they came about, what was it, a week before Florence was born? They were
It
here.
was right during beginning of before Christmas.
Yeah, so they were here for a week before she was born, and we spent every day together, and that was just Dylan's text going off. And then they ended up staying in Canada, 5 hours away in Saskatoon for 3 more months. But my daughter and I went up and visited them twice for a weekend, just and spent like 3 days with them, and got to really just be a little family with Florence and enjoy her and snuggle her up. And it was really generous of them, and I highly recommend it for anybody who wants to be a surrogate or be an intended parent, to like keep that close relationship with your surrogate, because it really did help in a way. Like,
Well, I couldn't imagine it if you was just some strangers that you never ever had any personal contact with. That would be much more transactional and would definitely change the process.
right, yeah, being more close and like loving and having a close friendship was very, very helpful.
And you've heard nightmares of surrogates with their the intended parents. It's been pretty nightmarish.
Yeah, we had an ideal situation.
Yeah.
So
our situation is definitely not the norm.
well,
Really?
it can be.
I wouldn't say so.
It's common. I think that we just hear more about the scary, like the bad situations, because
It's true.
my surrogate sisters online, we'll hear from them once in a while, be like, oh, look how cute my little belly buddy is, and we'll see a picture once in a while. But the ones that are dealing with a broken down relationship after the baby is born, they tend to reach out more, and so we hear from them more on our group, and we have to give them a lot more support and more time to help them through it. Because like sometimes you can have all the intents, but there's no legal binding after you've signed away your parental rights. You can't go back and say like, oh, you said we're going to have a friendship, and some intended parents have taken their baby and been like, well, it's been nice, I'll send you a picture on their first birthday, so that's really hard on some of them. And I couldn't imagine that happening to me. It would be a nightmare.
And it sounds like maybe that wasn't the understanding going in, but it became the understanding later for some of these people. And
Yes, yeah, it does happen, especially when it seems, because how it works with Canadian surrogacy is you can't profit, but you can, you have to get reimbursed for everything. So in the contract, it states like what you get reimbursed for. And a lot of times what happens after is that there's a little bit more reimbursement still owed. And so when the surrogate mother is like, okay, you still owe me for my 2 weeks off work after the baby was born, or, my child daycare while I was recovering from a C-section, and intended parents will be like, well, if you make us pay this money, then we're not going to keep in contact with you or let you see the baby anymore. Like that's the worst case scenario, but it does happen. And then like there is a lot of times where people can, like, we do have the option to go to court. It's in the contract that we could say like, hey, okay, you owe us this money, let's go. But every surrogate mother I know gives up the reimbursement just to keep contact. But then there's still that hurt relationship. Like it's still a little broken, right? So,
yeah, and is it a real contact you're having anyway, or is it kind of like you said, it's a broken? Yeah, that's too bad. But I guess we're all humans, right? And
I don't want to say it's common, because like him saying that that's common, it's not. I've heard of it maybe from 3 different people throughout all of Canada. But I mean, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen more. But I think my situation is more the norm. Maybe not as close as we are, but there tends to be prolonged friendships after.
So it sounds like the plan for the couple, what are their names again?
Tim and Chun
Tim and
Banks.
Chun. So their plan is to keep in touch with you and let their daughter know how the whole process was. And
Yeah.
I mean, and as we just talked about, that could change at any time, but it sounds like you're pretty close. And,
Hmm.
that's interesting to me because you kind of think of it as this from the outside when you don't experience it, because you kind of think of it as break, it's like, here you go. And then we
Yeah.
move on with our lives. And
Kind of like old school adoption used to
I
be.
guess so. Yeah.
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 But adoption isn't even truly like that anymore unless the birth mother chooses it. Like everything's pretty open now. I have some girlfriends who've given up their children in the last 12, 15 years, and they have the same kind of friendship like with the people who they've adopted their children out to. So I think it's just the change in times. So I'm sure at one point with surrogacy, it was more of a clean break, but I think right now, because, well, especially the way we have to communicate now, that it is more easily to stay in touch and keep those friendships up. So
I was going to ask you that. So you said the last 12 to 15 years you've had girlfriends that gave up babies. Were they in as close of touch before we all had mobile phones, which is about 10 years ago?
Well, one girlfriend in particular that comes to mind that I talked to a lot throughout this, she was giving up a baby for adoption, and she handpicked her parents and got to know them beforehand. So it was kind of the same thing. It's just that she was giving up her own child instead of having an in vitro. So, So yeah, she did it through an agency, and I'm sure they talked over the phone. Her baby went to Australia as well. So yeah. And
what is about Australia?
now they all have Canadian babies.
Well, I'm trying to think of more. I that covers a lot of the interesting parts. I think this is amazing. I've never heard of I've never known a person or been attached to a person that decided to become a surrogate before.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And I've heard that a lot from people. They're just like, I've never known anybody that's done this before. I'm like, me neither. They're like, why are you doing it? And I was like, I read a book when I was younger and I thought it was interesting. And now I'm going to be that one person everybody knows that does it, that's done it. So.
Well, I mentioned it to my wife and she said she would do it. And we can't do it anymore. But, I was surprised, and she was very matter of fact. It wasn't even like something she was worried about. So I wonder if there's more people out there that have that thought that they would do it, but maybe never take the step to do it.
Right.
Is there a big market? I mean, what's the market like? And market's a crass word, but for parents looking for surrogates, as opposed to just adopting, or is it kind of a overflow kind of thing?
See, for in our situation, because I was a surrogate for a same-sex couple, adoption isn't always an option for them, depending on where they live. And that's why a lot of same-sex couples will use Canadian surrogates, because like even if there is surrogacy in their own country, they might not even let a same-sex couple do it. But in our agency with SCO, there's same-sex couples and hetero couples, and Sally says that for every 10 intended parents looking, there's one surrogate. So it's not an easy thing to find, and especially right now with COVID, a lot of people backed out and stopped. So I'm sure that once everything kind of opens up again, it's gonna be more than that. There's gonna be more parents looking than surrogates available. It is, I think, because in Canada it is not for profit, it's truly altruistic. There's not as many people willing to risk themselves for, I would say nothing, but it's not nothing.
And how many people have approached you after?
Yes, I've actually, because of like, I did a CBC interview on the radio and newspaper articles on the radio here. And I've actually had people from all over the world that have seen the article and have like messaged me personally and just been like, so are you going to do a second journey? Cause we've had troubles finding a surrogate, or we've had 2 back out, or this and that. And I just kindly say like, I can't. My husband says I can't.
Deflect the blame.
Well, and also if I did do it again, it would probably be what we call a surrogacy journey, or a sibling journey in surrogacy.
Okay.
So sibling journey is where the same surrogate has a second child for the same couple. So if I did do it again, I'd like to do it for them again. I think going through and getting used to a whole new couple would be a lot. So.
Yeah, you don't know what you're taking on. But yeah, Dylan, what?
Nothing.
Okay.
It'd be different. It'd be because it'd be easy for you just to roll into the second one with them,
Right.
versus a new couple.
But yeah,
With
it's
all the new legal intricacies and yeah.
yeah. I know on our end it was not even near as much of a legal process as it was for them. After Florence was born, because in Saskatchewan we don't have surrogacy laws, so it goes under adoption. So basically, I was listed as her birth mother, and then they had to go through the process of getting my name off her birth certificate and get the other father's name put on as another parent. And we ended up with a judge who was making it very difficult. Like he was asking for I had to sign away my parental rights 3 times.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to know that I was perfectly okay with this, but I was like, oh, this is not adoption. This is surrogacy. Like, why do I have to keep signing? Every time I had to sign these papers, I can't imagine how much it costs dads to go.
And they couldn't leave the country until they had that paperwork done.
They couldn't leave the country till they had that paperwork done, because then they needed her passport. And I was at the point where I was just like, I'll write you a note. I'll say, like, I'm her mother. You can take her out of the country. But fortunately, right under the wire, we got all the paperwork done and in, and they were able to take her out of the country. But I just think if there's intended parents who didn't have somewhere to stay like they do, they own a condo in Saskatoon, that would be a huge financial burden to hit that kind of a roadblock. Like, yeah, so the legal parts is a lot for them, but even on my end, it was enough for me. I don't like contracts and stuff like that. So
how long did that take?
The contract?
Yeah, well, the judge afterward allowing
we signed our parental. Well, we both had to sign, because I don't know why. As my spouse, I guess we had to sign.
I don't know why I had to sign all this paper.
Dylan, were you on the birth certificate? Sorry.
No, not the birth certificate.
No, just me. But in Saskatchewan, because he's my spouse, I kind of felt like I needed his freaking permission for everything. But because he had to be part of the initial contract too. But we signed the papers the day that she was born, the first ones. And then they went to the judge, and that's when this one judge came back and was like, no, I want more. He wanted more proof that I was giving up my parentage, and they had to get all sorts of other things. Oh, and he wanted more proof that I didn't profit at all. So there was at one point where I was getting ready to send off my bank statements for the last 10 months just to show him, and like reimbursements. But luckily Tim and Shun had like kept a pretty good record of everything, so I didn't have to do that. But yeah, he just was being a little more particular than he had to be, whereas other judges had just been like, okay, good, I see what this is. Here you go. Here's your paperwork, on your way. So.
And maybe he'd been through an experience where somebody did that and then later wanted to revoke it. And who knows? That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess he held up 2 other intended parents with a surrogate child before, just being a little bit, I don't want to say anything bad, but maybe a little power trippy, it seems. Like, it just seemed unnecessary, and it was a huge extra cost.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a lot to do this.
Well, then they made it out right before the lockdown too.
Yeah,
so
2 weeks before.
They could have got stuck here for a lot longer.
Not even 2 weeks. Yeah, they were gone fast. It's crazy.
So wait, when was the lockdown?
We went into lockdown in Saskatchewan on March 18th, and they left March 4th, I do believe it was.
So that was 2.5 months, because you said the baby was born right like a week before Christmas. Is that
no?
right?
She was Florence was born in November. She was a November baby. So
it was 3 months. Okay.
So they were here for a while, and they made it. They were planning on going home then anyways. So luckily they got out before everything went chaotic in the world. So
and Chun was able to work remotely with his company down in Australia, so he could still work while he was in Saskatchewan. Yeah. I think Tim was on paternity leave or maternity leave, whatever you call it. Leave.
They were just very fortunate to be in a situation where they could stay here for a while, and thankfully, because they had to.
So this wasn't that long. I was thinking this was more like a year ago. This is just a couple months ago.
Yeah, no, November 6th was her birth date, which was she was born, and was it the 6th? Yeah, it was the 6th. And yeah, they left at the very beginning of March. It is very recent. This is my first birthday where I can have a cocktail in a while. So my birthday tomorrow. So
happy birthday.
Thank you.
29.
Yeah. Let's go with that. I'll take that. Well, if I was 29, I have like 10 more years to have more surrogates.
Makes me a creepy old man.
That's not what make. All right, sorry. So I have one question about that. So you said that some countries treat, for same-sex couples, it sounds like they can do surrogacy, but they can't adopt. Is that right? Or did I? Why is that? What's the?
You know, Tim and Trine have an older couple friend in Australia who are a same-sex couple, and they're a bit older than them, and they actually ended up having a surrogate baby in the States just a few weeks after my surrogate baby was born. But they had tried for years to adopt in Australia, and basically they were told you can only have children who are like severely disabled or terminal. Like they couldn't. So a lot of times same-sex parents, and especially in Australia, because I've read an article about this, they will adopt those children and take care of them. And but it's getting better now, like especially in Australia, because like it's got to be catching up with Canada a little bit. But there's other countries too, like where when they come back with a surrogate baby too, like one parent can't get parental rights, like they just can't, because they're not recognized as a married couple. And so
maybe you want to speak to some of the differences between Canada and Australia and their reasons for rights. No, you don't want to get into that?
No.
Okay, never mind.
Well, that's just really interesting to me because I don't see the, I guess I don't see the, I don't know the right word, but the differences. But like if you're adopting versus doing surrogacy,
right.
yeah, I'm not sure what I mean. There are differences, but I don't know what the functional differences are once you have the baby, and that's what I don't really understand. But
I know.
could they have I'll ask one more question. Could they have adopted from Canada, or do they have to do a surrogacy from Canada or
That
somewhere
I
else?
can't even tell you. Like when I was, even like surrogacy within Australia is a little more tricky than it is in Canada. So I'm guessing maybe adoption in Canada, because my friend did adopt a child out to Australia from Canada. But I can't answer that question. I don't know. I just think surrogacy was just, it was definitely like kind of a definite, not definite thing, but it was a little more sure.
I think they have the means to go through the surrogacy process. They probably wanted it genetically. It is genetically related to them. It was one of the fathers. Oh, I don't want to get into that.
No, we're not going to talk about that. They're genetically related to their baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know any more about that. I just know that the altruistic surrogacy in Canada is one of a kind in the world. So
Okay. This is fascinating. I'm so happy I'm talking to you. I really am. I can't even.
I love talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you love talking about it, and but I mean, what a gift. I mean, you. I'm sure you don't think of it this way, but you have sacrificed a lot of yourself for the good of someone else, and I think probably, and most people that I know, when they do just about anything we do, you just do it, right? It's something you have a desire for, and you find a way, and it comes about. But from the outside looking in, it really is a tremendous gift to someone else, and it's just really exciting to hear you talk about it. And so I can see your energy and your joy for it, and that's amazing. So
It feels like, because I knew all along it was a gift, but I also was doing it for myself, because I knew. But don't get me wrong, there was points where I was just like, ugh, why am I doing this? Like, this is nuts. Like, I was getting really good at going to the gym, and work was getting busy, and I'm like, why am I just going to pause my life? But like Dylan calls it a pause. I don't feel like it was a pause. I felt like it was like this extraordinary extra. And if anybody who's considering being a surrogate is listening to this, I just want to say, don't give up. Like, as scary as it gets, don't give up. Because even if it didn't go as perfect as it did for us, I'm still so glad I went through something. And I think if I didn't for the rest of my life, I'd always wish I had. So.
And everything worth doing is hard. Like, we could have given up easily at any point.
Yeah.
But we stuck through it, and we did it. So.
Yeah, that's fair. So do you know how many surrogacies there are in Canada or in Saskatchewan? Is it Saskatchewan or Saskatoon or what?
It's Saskatchewan, and then
Okay.
there's a city called Saskatoon.
Okay, I was getting confused. All right, I've heard of both, but
Right.
I was like, oh my, is it just pronounced Saskatoon up there? I don't know.
No,
Okay.
no, it's a city.
All right.
I'm not sure how many, like I don't have stats on that for you. I'm sure if you wanted to get in contact with Sally, she'd probably be more than glad to talk to you, like the Surrogacy in Canada online. But in Saskatchewan right now, I know of probably 4 other people just within my agency that have either had babies or are in the process of becoming. And then there's actually, and I know there's one that's doing what we call independent, where you do it outside of an agency. Actually not that far away, about an hour away from here. She's having twins for another couple. So.
Oh, wow. We did
Yeah.
that
You had
for
twins?
ourselves. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was asked if I'd carry twins, and I said, big no. No, no, no. It's going to be hard enough wobbling around with one in there. I can't
So
imagine.
did they just put one egg in with your in vitro and it worked from
Yeah,
one egg? That's amazing.
yeah,
That is not common.
I agreed to try 3 times. So I'm sure if it didn't work the first and second time, I would have maybe considered doing 2 the second time. But yeah, we were just really lucky. But there's
How many on ice did they have?
5.
5.
Yeah. So yeah, they had 5. So it worked on number 1, and I'm so glad because she's just so cute and perfect. But yeah, it's crazy how easily and quick it worked. But I did everything I was told. So if you're a fertile person and you do what you're told, it should work. Like
Yeah.
in a lot of times when people get IVF, they're struggling, right? I've always joked with Dylan, anytime I wanted to be pregnant, I can be pregnant. So because that's just been the truth. So, but
I don't know if that's a threat or just a conversation. Or
oh no, we're good now. He went to the vet before we started this whole journey. So
I got you. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I don't have anything else to ask, but do you have anything else that you'd like to add to any of that, or either one of you have anything you'd like to say?
I can't think of anything right now. I just love talking about her so much. I can show you a picture of her.
Yeah, let's see a picture.
So there's the reflection.
There you go.
There's my daughter and her right there.
Okay.
And little baby. That was the day she was born. That's actually a blanket I made for her while I was pregnant.
Cool.
So yeah, she's a lot bigger now. That was obviously she's almost 6 months old now. So, but I don't share any pictures that I don't personally take, and I haven't personally taken any pictures since February. So yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Well, Lisa and Dylan, thanks for your time. I really, I'm so glad that I saw your picture on his Facebook feed and I just asked the question because I was just like, man, hey, you're not telling anybody your wife's pregnant. What the heck, man?
Right. Lots of people are just like, weren't you just pregnant? Where's the baby? And I'm just like, oh, she's in Australia. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I was a surrogate. Okay.
That's a question. How have those conversations gone through the whole process where you meet somebody you haven't seen in 6 months and they're like, oh, you're pregnant. And then you have to go into, was that natural for you or how was that?
Oh, I've been very transparent about doing this. Like right from the beginning, I've been like, I'm going to be a surrogate if I can. And let's hope it all works. Cause I believe that, saying it positive out loud helps things come true. And, but the people that didn't know, I was just very blunt with them. I was just like, oh, it's not mine. And it's not his either.
I had those conversations.
Have
And
fun.
someone would ask me, oh, your wife's pregnant? I'm like, yeah, not mine. And I just smile and think that.
Yeah. So, and I had a lot of I had some people actually get pretty upset with me when I tell them like, oh, that's disgusting and how dare you? And oh yeah, not a lot, but a few. But otherwise it was mostly positive. Like I'd be like, oh, I'm a surrogate for a couple from Australia. And I actually knew them growing up and their family lives here in Estevan. And people are just like, oh, that's so cool. I've never known anybody to do that. And that's where I say, oh, me neither. So it was a lot of positive feedback.
I'm amazed that anybody would tell you that is strange.
Yeah, there was some people that would get pretty upset, or I could tell that as soon as I said it was for a same-sex couple, they weren't as enthusiastic.
Okay, yeah, that I can see, but I know whether,
One of my friends' mothers has always been, I don't want to say like homophobic or anything, but she's never been really comfortable with it. And she said following my journey has totally changed her mindset about same-sex couples and becoming parents and everything like that. So, and she's told me that sharing it with her friends and other than that, she goes, I've changed a lot of people's ideas on it in a good way. So that's definitely one super awesome positive thing. So for the very few people who are negative about it, I figured I'd just let them take themselves out of my life. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
If they can't respect that it's something I feel passionate about and believe in, then I don't need them. So.
Well, it's even changed some of our family members.
Yeah, I know both our mothers were not too keen on me doing this.
I'm just thinking, remember when your father met the grandfather?
This is a really funny story. So if you don't mind us keeping you, I know you keep trying to say goodbye.
No, please.
my dad, so my mom was really upset when I told her, and I actually didn't tell her till I was actually pregnant, because when I'd mentioned doing it before, she was dead set against it. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to do this and let her find out as she may. So my mom was really upset. So I guess my dad went to work the next day, and one of his buddies that works at another shop was there collecting door prizes for a hockey tournament. And he says to me, he's like, hey, get in here. I need an old friend to talk to about this. And he's like, my daughter is going to have a baby for a gay couple. Like, I don't know what to think of this. Well, it turns out it was the father of one of the dads that my dad was confiding in, but he didn't know who I was being the surrogate for. So
Small
just
world.
coincidentally,
Kidding.
he found an old friend, because like my mom hadn't shared with him who it was, so how did he know? But so then the I guess now grandfather of the baby he said, I thought to myself, like, how do I handle this? And he goes, I decided to just be truthful. And he's like, it's actually my son that your daughter is being a surrogate for, and our family couldn't be more thankful, and what a beautiful gift. And it like flipped my dad right around. And all of a sudden he was like my biggest cheerleader for the rest of my pregnancy. He helped my mom come around, and any other family members that were having a hard time with it. He's just like, it's too bad that you're not okay with it, because I am. So learn to deal with it or get out, because she's doing it and we're proud of her. So yeah, he was so supportive. The only reason he wasn't at the hospital when she was born is because he refused to get his flu shot. So otherwise I'd have a picture of them together. But yeah, my dad, he shocked me. But I think that interaction and that like kind of universal coincidence of who he decided to confide in, it was beautiful. It was just beautiful.
That's an incredible story.
I forgot about that story.
Yeah,
I had dinner with Tim's parents, and his dad told me the story, because I knew that my dad had somehow like fumbled over himself by saying something in front of the grandfather. But when I got the story from the actual grandfather, I was just like, oh, that's so much more beautiful than the way my dad told me. So it's great. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's maybe the most beautiful part of the whole story right there.
One of them.
Yeah, just the transformation of people and family. I mean, wow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the 2 nights before baby was born, my parents and their parents and all of us, we had dinner together, and there was gifts, and everybody else was having champagne except for me, but that's okay. And yeah,
she keeps going back to that, Dylan.
Yeah. But yeah, it was beautiful. And that's where our situation is absolutely unique, is a lot of times surrogates don't have family of their intended parents in their direct world. Like, I had lunch with Tim's mom occasionally before baby was born, and I got to know his sisters, and I even met his brother, and I met all of Choon's family, even though I knew his brother from high school, but I got to meet the moms, and yeah, that's nice. Lyric is just bringing me the gift that they gave her.
Oh, she's a ballerina?
She is a ballerina. So Tim and Choon gave her this gift the night before the baby was born, and it's just
it's not shoes.
It's a ballerina mouse and a little bar and a mirror and stuff. So it was very thoughtful.
That's very neat.
Lyric, do you want to say hi? Do you mind if Lyric says hi?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Hi.
Hi, Lyric. How are you?
Good.
She's got quarantine hair.
Yeah, there you go. We've all got that going, right?
Yeah.
I love your name, Lyric. It's a beautiful name.
Thanks.
Yeah. So how did you feel really good about this? You like having a surrogate sister out there?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we FaceTime once in a while, so she gets to see her little sister. And actually, Lyric and I are hopefully, if the world gets back to normal in time, we were planning on being in Australia in November for her first birthday. So we're hoping we still get to do that. If not, we might not make it for her first birthday, but we will go visit her eventually. So Dylan doesn't want to go. They offered him a ticket. He's like, 2 weeks off at home. He's probably going to play Star Wars video games a little bit.
Who would do that?
So, but yes.
This is wonderful. You guys are an amazing family, and wow, what an experience! I love the story about your dad. I can't the cosmic coincidence or.
Yeah, and like they don't even work in the same office, and you just be there, and they're old. They've been friends since they were in their young 20s, and like everybody knows everybody in this town. So that's another way that this was really cool. Like a lot of times when people be like, oh, who are you having a baby for? I'm like, oh, Tim and Choon. And one girl be like, oh, Tim was my grad date, or Choon was like, I worked with him and went to university with him. So it was kind of cool that everybody felt connected here. And I think that helped make the story even more beautiful as well.
Yeah.
Aside from the thing that happened with my dad. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, it was great.
Really amazing.
I want to do it
start.
again.
A discussion.
I'll
for
keep
another
bugging
time.
him. Yeah.
Well, if you do it again, we'll bring you on in process. How about that? And we'll see how
Perfect.
Dylan's holding up. I'm not worried about you.
No, I'll be fine.
Well, that's incredible. So, well, but before we wrap up, I'm gonna give a request to anybody that's watching or viewing. I have a limited circle of friends,
Mhm.
and I'd like to keep these stories. You know, our stories, regular people with amazing stories like this,
Mm.
like Lisa's surrogacy story. I would love to keep telling these stories forever. And if you know somebody that has a story like this, a story where you've sacrificed something of yourself, you've made it through tremendous loss, you've overcome something very difficult in your life, you can email me at regularamazingpeople@gmail.com. And I'd love to have a conversation with you just like this. No time limits, whatever works for you works for me. And we can get these stories out here and really, I think we can provide some light to the world. I really think this is such a positive story. And maybe we need it now more than we needed in a long time. I don't need to say more than that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Yes,
what was that, Dylan?
you're doing a good job. It's a good.
Oh, thank you, sir. I feel like I just gave it to you guys to talk, so that's great. But yeah, email at regularamazingpeople@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you, and we'll see if we can share a story together. And I guess I'm supposed to say like and subscribe too, so
Yes, yes, you are.
hit the like button. Well, thank you, Lisa. It was really good to meet you today.
Nice to meet you too, Dirk.
Yeah, and best wishes going forward, and thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, my pleasure.
Welcome.
All right.